and tell us what interests you in responsible scaling, what you're really looking forward to hear or get in today's webinar. Yeah, we look forward to having a very exciting and engaging session today. We'll hear briefly from one of us, Hellen Altshul, who's a consultant working on the aspects of responsible scaling and trying to mainstream that within the CGIAR. So let's just give it one more minute and then we'll officially start. I'll share my screen in the meantime. Please feel free to introduce yourself on chat. And we will record this and I'll start the recording. Oh, the recording is already started. Yeah. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Let me share my screen and then we start shortly. Let me know when you see it. Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Esther Kihoro. I work with the Impact at Scale team here at ILRI, but also within the Scaling for Impact Science program here at CGIAR. And I'm happy to welcome you all to this webinar today. So this is part of the Science of Scaling webinars, and the webinars form as are a platform where researchers and practitioners who are involved in the science of scaling, or also the practice of scaling, to share their experiences, but also practical lessons and insights. So the webinars are organized quarterly, but you will see of late we've had them quite close to one another. And this is an initiative really that stems from collaboration with Wageningen University and the Scaling for Impact Science program. And this brings together practitioners from here, CGIAR, but also other organizations working on scaling. This could include development organizations, universities, or private sector actors and partners. And the Scaling for Impact Science program works across these different regions. You see in this map here, so you can see it spans all over from Africa, Asia, South America, and North America. And it's the program that really has the mandate to work on scaling within the new CGIAR portfolio. And these webinars really are member-driven, both in terms of content, execution, and also the delivery of them. So they really mainly trying to ensure that we work on relevant topics that are practical and grounded in real-world scaling efforts. They are open to new members. And we've seen recently in a webinar we had last month, we were able to co-host it with GIZ, but we've also seen members from other organizations really coming to join, mainly as presenters, but also as people who want to contribute in the discussion or just learning from one another. So this is actually the 7th webinar. So we had the 6th last month. And for today, we will be hearing from Hellen. I'll stop sharing my screen. And I'll let Nico, who's my co-host today, to introduce Hellen and the topic for today. Over to you, Nico.
Thank you, Esther. Surprised. It's all good. I'm really glad to introduce Hellen Altshul, who is a consultant. She is working currently on a joint assignment for Scaling for Impact and PPU in System Office at CGR on a assignment on experience in the research for development, but also in the development sector. So in her previous assignment, she was working for an organization called Refushi. There's a great attention to the gender aspect, but not only. And I'm glad to give her the floor. We are looking forward to hear from her. And if you need any technical support, Ellen, let us know. I know you have some glitch sometimes last time. So we are here to support. Over.
Great,
Thanks,
thank
Nico.
you very
And
much. I hope you can now see the the presentation title. So as Nico said, my name's Hellen Altshul. I'm a consultant currently, but some of you may recognize my name. I did work in ILRI for 7 years from 2015 up to 2022, mostly working on the livestock CRP, as the old programs were called, but also doing some work on the performance and results management framework and being an active member and one of the co-chairs of the MEL COP, so the Community of Practice for Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning in the CGIAR. So today, what I want to talk to you about is the work that I'm currently doing as a consultant, which is about integration of responsible innovation and scaling into CGIAR processes and tools. So this is what I'm going to go through. I only have one slide on each, so it's not hundreds of slides, but I'm going to, tell you why we're having this webinar, tell you a bit about the work that I've been doing to date, the approach for integration that I'm suggesting, some sample ideas of additional questions that could be asked in order to show or to dig deeper into responsible innovation and scaling. And then we're going to have some breakout groups to discuss some of these questions and give your feedback and your inputs into this process before I start working on finalizing the suggestions and recommendations for the CGIAR. So why are we here today? As I said, we want to share some emerging findings and directions from this ongoing consultancy. What you're going to see is some draft guidance that I'm still developing on integration. And this is not just integrating CGIAR tools and processes, with each other, but also drawing on experience from other organizations. So information about what other organizations do in this area, and if there's anything that we can use in the CGIAR to improve or boost how we're looking at responsibility in innovation and scaling. Going to see some example prompts for reflection or questions for reflection on different aspects of responsibility, and some potential entry points across the work that the CGIAR is doing on innovation and scaling. And then going to be asking you to help explore what's useful, what's realistic and possible for you, and what fits in your context. And then, as I said, that feedback will help me to shape the final guidance that I'm going to be doing under this contract and the suggestions on uptake for the CGIAR. So in terms of how the work has been framed, I won't go into a lot of detail because I know you're all probably quite familiar with this, but the framing concepts of responsible innovation and responsible scaling are outlined here. So responsible innovation is innovation which is ethically acceptable, sustainable, and socially desirable. I've used 6 dimensions. The first 4 of these you probably recognize from work of the EU on their anticipation, inclusion, reflexivity, and responsiveness. I've added another 2, which have come out from various discussions taking place within the CGIAR and with partners such as Wageningen University and Research, which are dimensions of legitimacy and knowledge. Who is knowledge? And then in terms of responsible scaling, there are 4 principles. Responsible scaling is a scaling which is equitable, context sensitive, and inclusive. So you'll see inclusiveness or inclusion comes into both innovation and scaling. And the principles are social differentiation, power and inclusion, institutional fit, and adaptive learning. And these are principles which are generally across most of the literature on responsible scaling. So these are the concepts that are being used to underpin the analysis first of what's already being done in the CGIAR, and then the guidance on how to integrate some of these concepts more widely, now being sort of tested for how their usefulness and their fit through various discussions with teams and individuals in the CGIAR. The outputs from this consultancy are 5. The first one, which was the framework analysis report, mapped CGIAR processes and tools to these principles of responsible innovation and responsible scaling. That one is completed. The next part is about guidance on integration and strategic alignment. So it's drafted, but still to be finalized, reviewed and finalized. It will include draft guidance, prompts or questions, and entry points for addressing different aspects of responsibility. The third one, which is in draft form, is on stakeholder consultations and decisions. So summarizing what information and insights I've gotten from engagements with individuals and teams, and how that informed the guidance. So it's been drafted for the consultations that have taken place so far. This one will be added later. And then the implementation report. So by the end of this month, hopefully all of these outputs will be ready, is about uptake options based on the feedback, based on what people think is feasible, capacity needs within the CGIAR to do this, and support strategies. And then there'll just be a final report of the consultancy, synthesizing everything and giving links to all of these different documents that can be useful for different people, also showing the audience for all these intended outputs. So what have we found so far from the analysis and the consultations? The CGIAR is already doing a lot in relation to responsible innovation and responsible scaling. So I don't want to give the impression that this is not something that's already happening, because it is. And different tools and processes incorporate the aspects of responsibility in different ways. But these are the areas which looked like they could be better addressed. Reflexivity. So this is about questioning the assumptions that we're using, the framing and the purpose of both the innovations that are being developed and their scaling. Issues about power. So whose voice counts, who decides, what should be done in different contexts. Legitimacy. So this is, credibility, the fairness, the local appropriateness of scaling of innovations in different locations. Quite a lot of discussion about environmental sustainability. So how do we address climate risk and trade-offs with innovations? This is something that's been discussed with climate experts within the CGIAR system across different centres. Social differentiation is addressed, but the main emphasis is on gender. There is a possibility to increase how this is addressed for other dimensions such as age, disability. And then also the diversity of knowledge. So how are we incorporating Indigenous knowledge, local knowledge, and experiential knowledge that's being generated through the work that we're doing with partners? So just to show you kind of the results from that first analysis, down the left-hand side, you'll see the different instruments that I looked at. So some of these are more at the overall CGIAR level, and they're sort of, they're part of the governance structure of the CGIAR, like technical reporting arrangement, TRA, performance and results management framework, and IPM, the innovation portfolio management, the way that the CGIAR system is managing its innovation sort of pipeline. Some are more of processes, like innovation packages and scaling readiness, IPSR. And the others are really tools. So we have Gender Up, we have the scaling scan, and we have the relatively new 6-step approach. So these are the instruments that I've looked at, and they're marked or tagged against how much they incorporate the different dimensions of responsible innovation. So how much do they look at or include anticipation or inclusion or reflexivity? And you can see from this that there's a variance in how these different instruments address elements of responsible innovation, from Gender Up, which really directly or explicitly addresses all of, or tries to address all of these innovations, although with some gaps, as I mentioned, in coverage, partially included or not evident or absent from those instruments. And there are a couple of notes there, but not to worry about that. So you can see that it's variable, and different tools and different instruments can be useful to look at specific aspects of responsible innovation. Then when we come to responsible scaling, we've done the same thing for the 4 principles of responsible scaling. You can see pretty much all of those instruments look at or address adaptive learning. And then for the others, there's a mixture of whether they're addressing it completely or partially or not at all. Areas of social differentiation, power and inclusion, and institutional fit. So that's where that's the kind of analysis of what we have currently within the CGIAR system. So the integration approach that I'm now going to be, I talk about a little bit and that I'm working on, is prompts or questions that are designed to be layered into these existing CGIAR instruments. So we're not trying to replace them, and we're not trying to suggest necessarily brand new tools that people should use, but really just how can we incorporate some additional questions and stimulate additional thinking amongst CGIAR individuals and teams about how to how to incorporate some of these dimensions and principles into your work in developing innovations and in piloting them and profiling them, and then in scaling them. So there are 3 proposed formats for integration. We can have a sort of tag in menu, so it's optional. You can select when it's relevant to your particular innovation or your particular context. We can have some embedded questions in guidance or templates. And there's also the option of facilitated reflection in, reviews for monitoring, evaluation, and learning, or design sessions. And some of the tools already require, or at some stages of the tool use, they involve some facilitation. For example, Gender Up, and IPSR at the scaling readiness stage, there's some workshop that's necessary, which takes a couple of days to be able to think about some of these issues. But the goal is to have something that's sort of light touch, adaptable, relevant to the context of people working in the CGIAR, taking into account that people are already very busy, and there are sort of resource implications in terms of time and money and other things to add to what we're already doing on responsible innovation and scaling. So we're not trying to kind of create a lot of additional burden, but at the same time to make sure that we're not missing out areas that could be better addressed, or at least discussed, in relation to innovations and scaling in a responsible way. So here we have some sample prompts for responsible innovation. So by dimension, so rather than looking at what additional questions can we ask about anticipation, for example, we have a question of what risks or unintended effects might emerge if this innovation is scaled in a different context from where it's been developed. For inclusion, we look at who has shaped the innovation, who's been involved in developing it, who might be excluded from influencing or benefiting from it. For reflexivity, are we still addressing the right problem with this innovation, or has our understanding shifted since the beginning of our research and as we've gone through the process? For responsiveness, how has stakeholder feedback changed our approach or our strategy? And the additional dimensions of legitimacy. So who looks at this innovation as being credible and being fair? Who might question why we're promoting this particular innovation or why we're using this particular